Well, hi everyone. We're so happy to have you here for our resilience presentation series. This is hosted by the ETSU Ballad Strong Brain Institute. And if you would like to be added to our email list, go ahead and type your email address in the chat as well, and we'll be delighted to add you. I'm Megan Quinn, and I am one of the associate directors with the Strong Brain Institute. I'm also an associate professor in the Department of Biostatistics and Epidemiology in the College of Public Health at East Tennessee State University.
All right, bye.
And a little bit of information on what the Strong Brain Institute is. We were founded by a $1 million 5-year gift to ETSU from Ballad Health, and I'm truly honored to be asked to help work with this organization and to give y'all a little bit of background today and introduce our speakers. So I think most of us on this call know this, but the majority of Americans have experienced at least one major adverse experience at some point in their childhood. And at ETSU specifically, 1 in 4 of our students have lived through or may still be living through 3 or more major adverse events. So one of our goals in the Strong Brain Institute is to work to mitigate these experiences. So we use the science of childhood adversity coupled with mitigation science and resilience science to prevent and mitigate the negative impacts of ACEs or adverse childhood experiences on children's and adults' lives, and promote awareness in the use of resilience-informed procedures and policies, both at ETSU and throughout the Appalachian Highlands. And we want to be a resource for people to turn to when they have questions about how to best employ resilience-informed strategies and practice in their workspaces. So a couple quick housekeeping items before I have the pleasure of introducing today's speakers. Like we've said so far, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Also, feel free to use the chat to comment, post questions, or share information. We'll be monitoring that for the speakers throughout the session. We will share the slides if the speakers are okay with that, and we'll post those. We'll send those via email to all of you with the email address you registered for the session with. And of course, we always appreciate it when people complete our evaluations and give us feedback on the presentation and ideas for future topics. Finally, while we don't have formal continuing education credits, a certificate of attendance will be distributed to attendees. All right, so moving into our introduction of our speakers. So this presentation today is a 2-part series. So we have one today and then another one again on April 9th. We'll make sure that you have a link to that April 9th session provided in the chat during the end of this meeting. So today we have Dr. Ginger Christian, who is an assistant professor at East Tennessee State University in the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis. She was originally a special educator, and she has experience in pre-K through 12 administration as a district supervisor and in the principalship. We also have Dr. Amy Horton, an educator with 26 years of experience as a middle school teacher, assistant principal, and principal. She is currently serving as the principal of Unicoi County High School in Erwin, Tennessee. We also have Dr. Kevin Graham, an educator with 22 years of experience as a middle school teacher, assistant principal, and principal, and he is currently serving as the principal of Unicoi County Middle School in Erwin, Tennessee. And we also have Dr. Virginia.
It is, and I wasn't sure. You can take it or I can.
In the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis, also at ETSU with Dr. Christian, and she will be facilitating our discussion at the end of this session today. So those are our introductions, which of course were so brief, but I wanted to give a little quick background on kind of the work that brought this together in collaboration with Dr. Christian and Dr. Foley and the Strong Brain Institute. So we started working together as part of a Strong Brain Institute project called the Culture of Resilience in the Clemmer College of Education and Human Development. This was funded by Building Strong Brains Tennessee for 2 years. And that was really how the 3 of us first started working together. And then Dr. Christian and Dr. Foley took this into Unicoi County and brought on the other collaborators that I mentioned just a minute ago. But originally, some of the work that I was doing with Becky Haas was related to building assessments for a trauma-informed school initiative when she was working at Ballad Health as their trauma-informed administrator. So we pulled different assessment tools to kind of evaluate pre and post a trauma-informed care initiative at a school to see what we could do with that. Then the Strong Brain Institute was working to build a culture of resilience in the Gatton College of Pharmacy, where Dr. Diana Moreland was the principal investigator on that project. The Culture of Resilience project in Gatton was really what started the Culture of Resilience project in Clemmer. And through that work, we did a series of things that included training, coaching, and assessment. And you'll see some of that language throughout the presentation today. So this gave us the opportunity to think through how we might take pieces of the culture of resilience models that we did in higher education into colleges at State University to be able to use in the PK through 12 space. So on the next slide, we'll see just a little bit more on this collaboration. So we continued to collaborate between the Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis Department, or ELPA department at ETSU, with the Strong Brain Institute. And we really wanted to be able to kind of take that work that we were doing with Climmer as part of the Strong Brain Institute's work and be able to provide any potential resources and collaboration with ELPA and what Dr. Christian was wanting to do in Unicoi County Middle School and High School and Elementary School. So Dr. Christian has a lot of experience in this. And when we first met through the program with Climmer, it just seemed like a natural collaboration, and the passion for this work was so huge. So through that, they were able to connect with Ballad Health, our local health system, and their work. And you'll hear more about how kind of that shows up in Unicoi County in just a little bit. But through this work, we also really wanted to make sure we were disseminating our findings to a variety of audiences, because we found that a lot of the work that we see is kind of word of mouth, and people don't have a toolkit they can just grab and implement in their schools, or they don't have a research journal article that they can read and see how they want to model a program or scale up a program. So we really want to be able to do that. And this presentation is a part of that dissemination. So I think that's it from me. So Dr. Christian, I'll hand the floor to you.
Thank you, Megan. We are deeply appreciative of your work and partnership. I cannot say enough about Dr. Quinn and her vision for our community with the SBI. We want to talk about the project goals and our why in creating a district model for others to learn from. So as a principal in an elementary school setting, I had been involved in university partnerships for 5 years and had observed a significant decrease in challenging behaviors when we began to implement trauma-informed practices. So the question became, can we scale this up to a district initiative and provide a continuum of services? So you'll see here that our project goals are very specific. To support a district and school improvement goals in PK through 12, to mitigate the effects of ACEs among teachers and their students in rural Northeast Tennessee. The goal of our 5-year initiative, called the Resilient Schools Project, is to guide administrators in identifying what tools, resources, and practices in Unicoi County schools need to have in place to help our students overcome and really begin to grow in a true resilient mindset. Our partnership invited Unicoi County schools to work in collaboration. So Mr. John English was very open, the director of Unicoi County Schools, when we approached him with the conversation to learn with us about how we could adopt and implement trauma-informed practices through a pre-K 12 continuum to better support our students and understand the neuroscience that guides that. In order to do that, we could provide adverse childhood training. This was free of charge to the Strong Brain Institute and an exciting next step for the district. In a post-COVID process of time, this was in 21-22, we were able to, right out of the start of the project, provide training to all faculty and staff in the district. Provide school culture and climate training. Assessments became critical to the implementation and strategic planning. You will see here the training, coaching, and assessment that we have in place are tools to guide our process. So here was the why. We have a belief system that behaviors tell us a story. Behaviors, much like academic goals with math or reading, can have an instructional focus to overcome adverse childhood experiences. And the question we wondered is, if when we apply a trauma-informed system that honors the neuroscience over a continuum of years, because we know it's a minimum of 62, 63 positive interactions for a new neural pathway to be developed in the life of a child, to educate, inform a community at this level, what difference could we make for outcomes for our students? So the belief is a culture of care with a personalized learning model that honors the community school in both the adoption and implementation. The high impact strategies we're going to share with you are a result of the work we've completed to date as we continue to learn through this process. This is an example of data in one school, and our elementary principal today from Unicoi is unable to join us for the Q&A, so I will kind of share that voice. And of course, our work is focused in middle and high school. But look at this. This is a pre-K through 6th grade school. What we saw over a 3-year period of implementation with restorative practices, high impact trauma-informed practices, was a significant decrease in behaviors. Disruptive behavior on the bus, a 34% decrease. Notice classroom disruptions, 67% decrease. Fighting, 75% decrease. Additionally, the school demonstrated a level 4 in achievement in a high poverty situation and a level 5 in growth. The other important thing to note in the conversation of what scaling work and having a true systemic change with trauma-informed practices from the beginning of a child's journey through transition school to school and year to year is that we want a positive school culture where we enjoy the learning process. For those of you who are with us today, and I noticed expertise all across the state and some of my colleagues that are with us, I want to bring our attention to the fact that this is not just a conversation about student experiences, but also adult experiences. So when we're working with students in a high stress situation who are demonstrating behaviors because of situations that occurred the night before, we have a handle with care notice from a local police station. Students are going through a divorce. Anxiety is part of the conversation. When we think through death in a family, abuse, sexual or physical, we know that the impact and the neurodevelopment of that child is that they have significant gaps in the ability to process language and rational thought, but we also know that the brain develops till they're at least 25. But let's look at the adult brain and consider for a moment our phenomenal professionals, highly educated, passionate about serving children. When they are in a stressful situation, they also have an amygdala hijack, that fight, flight, or disengage feeling. And we want to provide strategies for adults and students that mirror one another. So as we create systems of support, we're able to reset the emotional hijack and re-engage in a classroom situation. The image you see here is an MRI image of medical students preparing to take their licensure exam. So we know that if our medical students feel this kind of stress, we can only imagine how a teacher who supports 20+ students all day, every day, has an opportunity to have stressful moments, but they're committed to the work of our schools, and this work is about commitment to them. Some interesting facts. Effective lessons to engage students include 10 to 15 minutes of instruction, being very respectful, to have intentional breaks. From 1 to 5 o'clock, we notice an increase in disruptive or disengaged or challenging behaviors. Notice we're not saying negative behaviors because behaviors tell us a story. So how can we provide proactive supports to schools in that medium to be able to decrease the challenges and increase student engagement? Mental health is foundational to this. Following the experiences through COVID-19 and challenges associated with long times of isolation, students who didn't previously demonstrate challenges with anxiety in school now sometimes do. But this mental health data from Ballad Behavioral Health, one of our partners, really helps us anchor our why. When we see that suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death between 15 and 24, we in public education and in schools across our state can provide intentional, proactive, and consistent interventions to be able to tell a different story with those high numbers of anxiety and behaviors that lead students to consider suicide as an option. 1 out of every 5 adolescents are struggling with a mental health problem currently in Tennessee. Recent national data informed us that in addition to mental health challenges, the national average for chronic absenteeism last year was 20%. You're going to see some exciting data about how this work is interrupting that data and how we're making sure children are in school. I'm going to skip ahead to the SAMHSA 6 principles of trauma-informed approach. For those of you who have not seen this before, these 6 principles guide our practice with trauma-informed specifically. Are we creating safe environments, trustworthy systems, peer support, collaboration, voice and choice, student voice? How are we intentional to provide a way in which students are helping us understand what they need to be successful, and cultural, historical, and gender issues? But what we noticed and what we've learned, in addition to that framework, we needed to craft a framework that guide our practice as school administrators, as principals and teachers, counselors who are supporting our students in the day-to-day work. So we crafted the Resilient Schools Framework. Dr. Foley and a team of researchers and leaders have spent really 5 years looking deeply at this framework. For our conversation today, and those of you who are new to education, I want to bring your attention to a couple of points. School culture and climate is critical to this work. Understanding core values, who we are, what we believe, and teaching children explicitly what those behaviors look like. Respectful, kind, responsible, leadership, safety. If we have previously not experienced a safe environment, often students are learning what safety looks like in our schools. How do we explicitly teach that? When a student transitions from a school to school, what does that look like? You're going to see the trauma-informed practices and, of course, community engagement practices. This framework is built around the idea of 7 high leverage practices that are systems that exist in schools. And also 7 systemic changes. And a system means if, for example, a pilot, when he gets into an airplane or a helicopter, does a systems check before he begins to take off. We want to be very intentional to guide our principals and school leaders to look closely at the systems in place and think through that lens of a personalized model. This is a learner-first framework. The exciting part of this framework for us is the community engagement practices have evolved in the first 18 months of the partnership, and they are now a sustainable force in the partnership as we continue. Why the term resilience? We want to capture the term that identifies what hope looks like and how we overcome challenges associated with ACEs. The Resilient Project that Dr. Quinn brought to Clamor sparked this title. So resilience is the capacity of a dynamic system to adapt successfully to challenges that threaten the function, survival, or future development of that system. And we understood and listened deeply to the concerns schools brought to us following the pandemic, that they needed additional support to think about how to help adults and students heal through the process of trauma experienced. The research has been critical to this. Dr. Quinn, Becky Haas, had worked previous to our partnership on tools that can guide our practice. These are available free of charge to you if you want to use them. They are the Mid-Year Student Success Survey and the Resilient Schools Changing School Culture. This has been very important because we're focused here on the trauma-informed practices and that system inside the school, year to year, class to class, school to school. So the mid-year assessment allows us to let the Resilient Schools team, which is a leadership team within the school, identify their need and strengthen professional learning and ongoing implementation in the spring. The spring survey allows us to learn and think deeply about what we need to do through a better lens. We wanted to give you a quick view of year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. We are currently in year 3 of this project. In the first year, as part of the partnership with the SBI, we had all staff complete ACEs training. Again, this is available to you today. You'll see that you can earn a badge to tell the story of spending time there. Created the school teams. The Resilient School Surveys began, and we identified students in Tier 2 and Tier 3 in the middle high school. This was an important conversation, and middle and high school principals with us today might be surprised to learn we were able to do that in 2 hours using the data report we're going to share. The schools between year 1 and year 2 identified their core values. They're not consistent school to school, nor should they be, because they exemplify the community in which they serve. I'm going to let the principals tell that story. But the bridge from an office discipline referral back to the classroom was critical. When a student is suspended in school or out of school, there is a conversation that's restorative and instructional with the individuals involved in that conflict. So the student might be a teacher or a group of students, and there is a process that's also part of the policy. We crafted reset and calm spaces to allow students a place to go before an office discipline referral to de-escalate in real time and re-engage, and capacity building institutes. In order to monitor our progress, we meet every 9 weeks with our principals with touch points, the capacity building institutes in the fall and spring of each year, and the data to inform our process. For those of us who have read the ACES assessment closely, what we'd like to bring your attention to is the connection to policy that guides us at the state level. The most updated policy requires us to give evidence of how we are explicitly teaching positive behavior expectations and interventions following an office discipline referral. But we've also added the component to spend time with students to investigate, do we need to consider additional mental health resources through the ACES assessment? And that's a conversation that occurs with our counselors following a discipline infraction. So we're going to explicitly teach school core values, revisit those core values after every break, provide visual guides. We have the resilient data report that helped us identify tier 2 and tier 3. And here's an example of what that data report looked like. In order to identify our middle and high school students, we looked at previous year data on ISS and OSS, quickly identified students who needed proactive interventions, met with the counselors. The counselors are meeting with those students 2 or 3 times and using the trauma-informed practices we're going to share with you as we continue this conversation today. In addition, the principals have identified students and have the Resilient School Student Success Plan using the Dunn-Rankin, which is a very easy assessment tool, talking with a student to get voice and choice. We're learning what students would like us to think about so they can be successful in school. I'm going to ask Dr. Amy Horton from Unicoi High School to share her work and talk about the process at this point in the journey. Dr. Horton.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. Before I begin, I just want to give a shout out to ETSU and our partners there with the Strong Brain Institute in ELPA, and then also our Ballad partners, because this really has been transformational for our school and our system. So I'll dig into Unicoi County High School, the Blue Devils. So who we are, we have about 617 students, around 90 faculty and staff members. Demographics, you'll notice about 86% white, 12% Hispanic. I will say we have work to do. If you want to look at our school grade, our letter grade was a D this past year, and TVOS level 2. So we definitely have some work to do there. So we started this journey with a UCHS mission, which is we will provide a world of opportunities for all of our students. And that really guides the work that we do with our students. Go ahead and hit the next slide for me. All right, so a little bit about our journey. So I am a beginning administrator. This is my 3rd year as principal at the high school. And we also had a brand new counseling team that joined us. And we came back post-COVID and realized very quickly that our students were not okay. They were struggling with anxiety, depression, some behaviors that were explosive. And so our teachers noticed there was an issue. And honestly, like our adults were not okay either. We all really struggled coming back. And so my teaching team was ready to receive some help. So with the help of ETSU, we quickly began weekly student success meetings. And so administrators and counselors meet each week, and we look at those tier 2 and tier 3 students. And again, those were originally identified based on the previous year's office discipline referrals, in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions. And we talk about those students every week. We check up on their grades. We check up on their attendance. We check up on their behaviors. Is there a side note that maybe our attendance officer can share with us about something going on in the home that we just need to be mindful of? And then we task each other with how we're going to help that student that week. Then at the end of the semester, for students who have improved attendance or behavior or grades, we move those to our student success list. And so it's really nice to see when we are able to shift a student from that at risk to being successful there. Anytime we have a student in school suspension or out of school suspension, our counselors do restorative questioning with them and re-entry back into the classroom. So there is a consequence. Sometimes we forget that we think like resilience and restorative practices is in place of discipline, and it really goes hand in hand with discipline. But part of that reentry is, okay, we made a mistake. Our behavior told a story. What was that story? And how might we shift that and do something different in the future? We created a building leadership team. Um, we reaffirmed our core values. We are P4, and I'll tell you what that P4 is on the next slide in just a minute. But we already had our core values, and so we continued with those. And then from our building leadership team, we took volunteers to become part of our resilient schools team, and that's kind of like a subcommittee. And that those members completed the initial survey for our school that we based all of our work on. Through the resilient teams, all faculty, staff, cafeteria workers, custodians, everyone in our building has had initial ACEs training free of charge from the Strong Brain Institute. We also started branding our school, and I'll show you a little video here in a minute as well about our P4. And we've also created a Google Classroom resource for all of our teachers. And anything that we have, we just continue to load that on that Google Classroom for our teachers to use. And then our Blue Room was created, and I'll share a little bit about that as well. Next slide. All right, so P4, we are P4. We've got pride, passion, purpose, and perseverance. And then those core values were there before me. And so when we started the work of looking at what our core values needed to be coming out of COVID, these 4 words just kept coming back. And they're not maybe your traditional core values, but our students and our faculty really connected with those words. And so we doubled down and decided to stick with them. But I did ask all of our faculty and staff and students to give me some feedback. And so with the word pride, I asked them to tell me what it looks like, and I asked them to tell me what it means, and actually took the language from our faculty and staff and students and built this. And you'll see a poster like this in every classroom. You'll see a poster like this in our hallways, in our handbook, on any kind of PowerPoint presentation, because that is who we are. Talking about pride, when we talk about pride, we talk about becoming a freshman in high school. You start to have pride in yourself, your family, your community, your school. And so they start that as their freshman year. Passion is their sophomore year, and that's when they start taking other classes. They start joining groups, playing sports, and they get really excited about something that's connected them to school. And then purpose is that junior year where they start trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. And so figuring out what they're meant to do in life. And then if you work with the high schoolers, you know that senior year is all about perseverance and sticking into the very end. So some things we did to help support our core value work and our work with resilience was some intentional scheduling, because that can be hard to find time to do these things that we're going to be talking about. So we created something called Blue Block, and it's a skinny period. It's about 30 minutes long, Monday through Friday. And we try to balance it between like what students want to take and then what students need. So there could be EOC tutoring, there might be ACT prep, there might be creative writing, mythology. So some are half credit classes, some are just for fun. We also have skills teams that will participate during that time. We do advisory and homerooms during that time. So it comes in really handy finding time during the school day to set aside for this work. And now I want to just show you a quick WBDN. This is our student news.
Dr. Horton, can we show that right as we transition at the end?
Oh, sure. That's fine.
Is that great? Go ahead though and set the stage so that we all as they watch it.
Sure. So again, it is just introducing our P4. All right, so going back to that, building the bridge from consequence to self-regulation, with our restorative practices, that office discipline referral back to class, I want to talk about that just for another minute. Again, we identify those students in tier 2 and tier 3. Tier 2 students were those students who had like in-school suspensions. Tier 3 were those students with out-of-school suspensions from the previous year. And so we divided our students up for that. They completed the Dunn Rankin, which is just basically a survey that talks about their motivation. So what types of things are students motivated by? And that just kind of gives our counselors and our teachers and our admin just a look, a peek into what motivates them so that we can better work with those students independently or individually, I'm sorry. Tier 2 students, those are students who have been in in-school suspension. They meet with the counselor 2 times each 9 weeks. Tier 3 students, those are our out-of-school suspension or those students transitioning back from alternative school. They meet with our counselor 3 times each 9 weeks. And again, those are just kind of like those check-ins, just to make sure that those students know that they're being supported. Someone cares about them, someone noticed them, and what can we do to help them? Some restorative practices that we have started implementing this school year. Again, that teacher training and ACEs. And then we're moving towards restorative practices training, where we're going to go more in depth with all of our faculty and staff. We have implemented what we're calling mindful minutes. And these are these restorative circles you've probably heard about. You might get your class in a circle and you might pose a question to them, and then you go around the circle and everyone kind of shares. This is a wonderful way of building community. And I will tell you, the high school teachers were a little hesitant about it because they felt like older students would not buy into it. They thought it was kind of babyish or more elementary. So I did a restorative circle with all my faculty and staff, and there were about 70 plus of us in this circle. And it was pretty powerful. I asked them to tell me about the best part of their day. And so I've got some great feedback from them, and most of their stories were stories about students and student successes. And so it made us all feel good. One person said, they were dreading this part, but they ended up really enjoying the best part of their day was participating in that restorative circle. But again, we're calling it mindful minutes. And the ask of our teachers is to find a minute a week to create one of these circles. And you just throw that question out there and you give your students an opportunity to speak and to be heard. We do P4 lessons during Blue Block that I mentioned earlier, where we just try to emphasize pride, passion, purpose, and perseverance. Most of our teams, special ed, administration, counselors have been trained in de-escalation techniques with our students. We encourage teacher swap outs. There's work to do there. I still feel like some of our high school teachers at least feel like if they tap out, like they're not doing their job. So we want to encourage that. Like we all need a minute. So let's take a minute. And so we encourage them to give us a call. We'll come swap out with them, let them go take a break, take a minute, and then come back in strong. We have started co-teaching. So with some classrooms, we have a special education teacher and a regular education teacher together, and they're teaching EOC courses, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, English 1, and English 2, just to try to support the academic and the behavior of our students. All of our students in 10th grade have the opportunity to be trained in teen mental health first aid. And our counselor is a trainer, and so she's able to train those during their wellness and PE periods during the day. And then reset spaces have been created, and we've created a reset space for students. We've started a reset space for faculty and one for staff. This is our blue room. And so if you think about a reset space, we all have times where we get dysregulated, right? Like we're having a minute and we just need to take a minute. And so we want to encourage students before they do some type of outburst, screaming, yelling, cussing, hitting, whatever it might be, just to take a break, to take a minute. And so we encourage any student that's in distress to seek the blue room. So this room is off of our counseling hallway. This was through a generous donation from Ballad in consultation with our partners at ETSU to create this reset space. There's exercise equipment. You'll see a treadmill and a bike and little pedals. There's a punching bag. There are art supplies, coloring pencils, markers, a dry erase board with dry erase markers. We have manipulatives like fidgets and spinners and pops. We have a sound machine, We have a massage chair, different seating options, a beautiful blue mountain background, gentle blue lights up in the ceiling. And we also see that there's a computer screen there. So again, anytime a student needs this, they can ask their teacher to go to the blue room. The teacher will allow them to leave. They check in at the counseling office. The counseling staff will ask them give them a quick survey about their name, what the issue might be, what they would like to use in the blue room. We hide a bunch of the stuff and just about what they need, so they're not overstimulated. I want to say this is not taking a bad kid and putting them and letting them play in the sandbox. A lot of our teachers felt like we were rewarding bad behavior, but this space is before that happens. So it's a student realizing they're about to blow their top and to seek that help so that they can self-regulate in that classroom. Let's see if you'll go back one more. So here's a little bit about the data that we've been collecting using that survey for our students. So reasons students would use the blue room: home issues, academics, peer relationships. I just needed a break. We were really worried that tons of students would come down and there would be a line and nobody would be in class because everybody wants to hang out in the blue room. At the high school level, we're seeing the opposite effect. By the time students are getting to high school, they are actually worried about stigma attached to mental health or needing a reset space. And so it's actually keeping students from using it. Now, students can self-select to go to a blue room, but a teacher can also see a student who is struggling. And you've seen those students in your classrooms before. If you're a classroom teacher, they're down, their heads down, they're crying, they're fidgeting, they're looking around, they're anxious. You know those students. So a teacher could also say, hey, do you want to go to the blue room? We are seeing about even as far as grade levels, and we do have more females who are using the blue room than males. And again, I feel like it goes back to that stigma of mental health that we're fighting there. Some things that students are using, they love the massage chair, soft items, the bike, just calming down. Over in the corner, the art supplies. The computer is used for anytime we have a student who has had any like suicidal ideation or made any threats, and they can do their telehelp visits as screenings using the computer there in the corner. We do not allow cell phones, and we do not allow more than one student in the room. And the range of time is anywhere from like 5 to 15 minutes. So a little preliminary data. One of our major issues for our school is chronic absenteeism. We were at 32.8% chronic absenteeism in 21-22. Again, that's coming out of COVID. In 22-23, we dropped to about 28.2%. This year, I know we're only to March, but we're holding strong at around 14% right now. And so we believe that having a space for students to come and de-escalate, to self-regulate so that they can get back into the classroom is actually helping our absenteeism rate.
All right. I'll speak just a few minutes on the Unicoi County Middle School. A lot of the things that you heard Dr. Horton talk about are things that are very similar to that we have going on here at the middle school. Dr. Horton and I spend a lot of time in collaboration. We want our students to hear common language. We want protocols in place that not only work at the middle school, but also will work at the high school. Expectations. We both set a high level of expectations for not only our students, but our staff. So we work very closely to make sure that we have all of those in place and that they align. Our school is about 445 students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We also have 100 pre-K students in our building, which gives us about 550 total. Faculty and staff, there's about 65 people, adults in our building. Demographics, 80%, 86% white, 12% Hispanic, 32% economically disadvantaged, 60% students with disabilities. Our school has been an ATSI school in the past with students with disabilities, so we keep an eye on those, and we put some of these practices in place with the students who fall into that range. So we're hitting all students with our resiliency. For this past year, we were a level 3, and we got a letter grade of a C. This process started here at the middle school. I was approached about implementing or joining the Resilient Schools project. And when I got that offer, I immediately decided that this is not a decision I can make as the principal. I felt that if it was going to be successful, I would need to go to our school leadership team. And so we sat down with the leadership team. We really talked about the pros and the cons, the benefits of for our students, the benefits for our faculty and staff. And so we pretty much had a vote, and the vote was going to be, yes, we're going to join the project, or no, we were not going to join. And after our first vote, our leadership team voted not to join the Resilient Schools project. They voted not to move forward. And they were really voting no because they felt it was going to be more work for teachers. Would this really work in the middle school? Dr. Horton kind of referenced this earlier, is some of our people were like, our kids should not be able to play in a sandbox all day and not get consequences. So we kept having the conversation because the administration felt this really is something that our schools should look forward to, but I was not going to make the decision for the school. And so we kept having conversations. Dr. Christian came back in and talked to us. And so we revoted, and our teachers overwhelmingly said, okay, this is what I think we need to do for our students. And so when we revoted, everyone said, we'll wholeheartedly support this, and they have. I'll give it to my faculty and staff. They have really bought into what we're doing. Even those who are our naysayers have gotten on board. Once our leadership team decided that we were going to do this, we decided that we needed a resilient school team, and we wanted a small team, but an impactful team. And so that is the principal, the assistant principal, the school counselor, librarian, and we decided to put 2 teachers on there. Having the administration on the team, I think, is very important to show that we support the work, that we are rolling up our sleeves with the teachers, the counselors, the librarians to make sure that our students are being educated on our core values, and that we are putting things in place that are making our students very successful. The Resilient School team, they completed a survey to begin the conversation. The survey really was looking at what we have in place at the school at the beginning of this process. And a big takeaway from this is that we did have things in place. Our teachers didn't know we had things in place. But we also found out that our teachers were already doing a lot of the things that is required or what we're trying to implement through this project. And so that kind of alleviated a lot of their tension or their worries, is because they were actually doing a lot of these things anyway. But a big piece of it is that we established our core values. We really didn't have core values before this process began, and I'll speak to those in just a minute. But that was kind of a process, a rough draft, and we went through a lot of different drafts trying to figure out what exactly is going to work for our students. And then once we got our core values, we needed to put into play a plan for educating our students. We felt that, there's no need to have core values if our students don't know what our core values are. We could put posters on the wall, but would they still know what they are? So we began by making slides, and those slides would go up on the screen during homerooms every morning, and it would be addressing one of the core values. But then students started losing attention. The middle school students just started just ignoring the slides. And so we took it to the next step, and we started making videos. As the principal, I started making videos that were kind of off the wall. It could have me air fighting in the bathroom. I was stealing vapes out of my mom's pocketbook. My mother does not vape, but just those type of things that we hear a lot from students. Where did you get your vape? From my mom's pocketbook. And so I started making videos that related to what we were hearing in the office. And so we continued to build upon those videos with discussion questions, and then we have a concluding video. So we decided to really frame our work, our education piece, around a 3 weeks model. Week 1 would be an introduction video, week 2 would be discussion questions, and week 3 would be a concluding video. And all of this was taking 10 minutes during the morning during our homeroom time. Our core values, we landed on UCMS students are respectful, responsible, and growing. We figured that in middle school, we need to teach the foundation for respect, respect for others, respect for property, be responsible for having homework. When they come to the middle school, we don't really treat them as elementary students anymore. They have a lot more freedoms. We have bells where they change classes. They have lockers for the first time. So a lot of responsibility that they're going to need in order to be successful students. And then we landed on growing. A big piece of us is growing. We want our students to grow. We want them to grow in academics, academics. We want them to grow as citizens, their self-pride, their empathy. And then we kind of have a motto with a lot of the things we do here. We don't be a devil. We're the Blue Devil. So don't be a devil, be a Blue Devil. And we'll hear kids in the hallway, if they see a student doing something they're not supposed to be doing, you'll hear students say, don't be a devil, be a Blue Devil. So we're kind of looking at our resiliency as a three-part approach. When we began, it was office discipline referrals, ISS, OSS, and then of course our Blue Room. So discipline, in all middle schools, discipline is usually an issue, but we decided to kind of tackle it by putting all of our behaviors that we commonly see into tiers. Tier 1 behaviors, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Our Tier 1 behaviors are things that happen in the classroom that in the past had traditionally gotten an office referral. Tier 2s and Tier 3s usually result in some type of in-school, out-of-school suspension or zero tolerance. But our Tier 1 behaviors, what was so important about that is we started giving teachers strategies for dealing with those in the classroom. And so we have seen a decrease in our Tier 1 behaviors as far as terms of office referrals, because our teachers are now having strategies in order to deal with those behaviors. If a student is referred to the office, they have to go through restorative questioning. We sit down and we'll ask them what happened, what are you thinking of at the time, what have you thought about since, who's been affected by what you've done, how can you make things right, how can you respond differently in the future, and what do you need in order to successfully return to the school environment. We're very big on the restorative questionings because that gives students a time to reflect on their behavior and how has their behavior impacted others. ISS, OSS, we look here is we will continue that restorative reflection, counseling sessions. Our counselor is more involved once our student goes to ISS, OSS. Every day they're in ISS, they're meeting with our counselor. If you are chronically in ISS, you're going to work through a success plan. If you go through OSS, you're going to go through a success plan. And that plan is really strategies for preventing future office discipline referrals. You're meeting with the counselor at least 2 to 3 times a month. And still a lot of reflection. Our goal here is we know we're not going to eliminate office referrals and we're not going to eliminate ISS, OSS, but our goal is to start reducing it and making students aware of their behaviors and how those behaviors are impacting others. And then finally, the Blue Room has been a great success for us here at our school. It's a reset space. Dr. Horton spent quite a bit of time speaking about the Blue Room. We have procedures in place that I think are geared toward middle school. Every one of our classrooms has a blue card in the back of their classroom. When students need to leave the room, they automatically will go and pull a blue card and the teacher asks no questions. Our students will go bring that blue card to the office, and then they are put with a counselor, and that counselor takes them to the Blue Room. They do like a little session, a de-escalation session. They will go into the Blue Room, and then they will end that with some follow-up questions to determine if that student is ready to go back into class. Oh, there, yeah. So this is the pictures of our Blue Room. It's a lot of the same things that the high school has in their Blue Rooms. Ballad Health provided this for us. We opened in April of 2023. During that time, we're almost ready to hit 100 student visits. So I guess that is a celebration, or not a celebration that 100 kids had to be out of class and use it, but it's also a celebration that our students have used it and they've used it successfully. Some of our data indicated that I think 79 out of 80 students had said that it was a success and the Blue Room did help them. I will tell you a story really quick from yesterday. A student was in our office and she was screaming. She wanted to go home, and this was at 9 o'clock in the morning. And she's adamant she was going home. And in the past, that student probably would have gone home. But our counselor got her to the Blue Room, and she was able to sit in there for about 20 minutes, de-escalate, calm down, and then she's able to stay at school the rest of the day. And that kind of goes into where we're at right now with our win, is that our chronically absenteeism is currently around 4%. Last year as a school, we were 21% chronically absent. This time last year, we were almost 15% chronically absent. So the strategies that we're giving to our students is allowing them to maybe leave class for 10 minutes, but they're de-escalating and getting back into class. They're not needing to go home. So for us right now this year, we're considering that a huge win.
So we want to spend the next 5 to 7 minutes talking about the data and also some next steps and lessons learned. Those of you who registered with us, if you'll remember, we're going to provide a panel conversation right at the hour at 1 o'clock, so you can ask questions from the principals and the team members here, but also we want to learn from your experience and what's working well in your schools. We will stop the recording at 1 o'clock for that more informal conversation. But currently, the core values have been established: restorative process and reset spaces. 34 of 109 high school students have been effectively moved from receiving tier 2 or tier 3 back to tier 1 at the high school. And that was a report as of last summer. So that's very encouraging. We also see this decrease in 21% being chronically absent from school to 4% in February. There are other indicators that we are looking at, and I want to talk for a moment and really champion the school leaders that are on this call and that are sharing their work here today. This is a commitment. It's a commitment to the work over a period of time, over a period of years, to adopt, implement, provide onboarding, make sure that every adult that touches the life of a student has been trained with trauma-informed practices and is working seamlessly with the systems now in place to support students in crisis. Dr. Graham and Dr. Horton have been a champion of this work in their conversations, in their conduct, in their countenance, the videos, and I'm sorry that time has limited some of that. The videos are inspired and they are telling a story. And both of these principals have said, how are we capturing student voice? How do students guide our process? Because we understand when students can talk about the work and what they're learning, that it's not just knowledge, but it's moved to application, and that we can demonstrate how we understand that and make a positive change in our whole life. This work is really crafted around the idea that students are not just our future, but we are in fact their future. And it is the amazing commitment of the teachers, faculty, staff, the bus drivers, everyone who touches the life of a student has access to knowledge about how to better support students. So this is our initial data. I also want to talk about common language and the reset spaces. So Ballad Behavioral Health, under the leadership of Brett Graham and Dixie Way, Jim Shannon have been partners. This has been an important conversation, just as we're leveraging the expertise through the SBI and the team members that launched this work in our community. We're also connecting the expertise of the individuals that serve our students in mental health facilities. So we are building a bridge back and forth when students might need more intensive support, and what they have learned works well. And so common language has been an important part of the conversation, and we are training in teams together in our Capacity Building Institute. This team before you visited a school district in Virginia, Roanoke City, who have been deeply involved in restorative work for 10 plus years. And one of our ahas, one of the things we pulled away as a district implementation team was common language, and that we're trauma responsive. And so what does resilience look like? And you can see here in the list, you've heard this language, but this work is deeply rooted in emotional intelligence. Can I recognize my own emotions as they're occurring? Can I manage my emotions as they're occurring? Can I recognize the emotions of people around me? Can I manage the emotions of people around me? Can I teach self-regulation? And especially critical for school leaders and adults that engage with a larger number of individuals on a daily basis. But the reset spaces, we are deeply grateful to Ballad Behavioral Health. And our second webinar on April the 9th will be focused on the reset space, the items to purchase, the process for referral, the data collected today. We're going to expand and have other partner schools with us for that conversation. The reset space allows that intervention before an office discipline referral. And again, it allows an instructional space that connects that restorative process to every person in the building. We also have learned and are intentional that adults need calm and reset spaces and places to reset during their own workday. You will see here we've identified fist to 5, start breathing, 5 senses, check in, check out. And we're going to close our session today with one additional strategy that both adults and students can use. It is important to note the respect that we have for teacher voice in our partnership. In one professional learning session, we met with small groups of teachers all day in a PLC, professional learning community conversation, for our friends who are not used to that acronym as educators, and asked the teachers, which strategy do you think would work well in your building? And it was consensus on the ones that we have selected as a district. This also supports how important it is to let teachers as well as principals have voice in the creation and to support students in this work. There are resilient leader principles. And so as we conclude our conversation today, we want to kind of center in the work of resilient leadership. It takes courage to lead systemic change, to put systems into place, and any organization that have not existed previously can have an opportunity for resistance and a lot of important questions. So vision is the work. The core beliefs create the environment, the language of leadership. Dr. Horton committed to restorative practices as a trainer. She made a decision that in her high school, she wanted to be one of the train the trainers so she could model that work in all interactions. Dr. Graham, with his video creation and the reset data, he was instrumental in crafting the way in which we could collect the data for report and to monitor over time, but more importantly, to talk with students about what is working well for them. So when they are interacting with community members, with teachers, with students, it's a common conversation of we are committed to this work. I've heard and celebrate both of these leaders for saying we are moving forward, let's go together. And it has really been able to build that support around law of the lift and help everyone get involved in the conversation, and also the law of best fit. Who are the individuals who can innovate this work in the beginning and help move it from an idea to sustainability? So we want to close with this conversation and concept of what do you need to have successful experiences in schools? So when you think about your role, mental health provider, principal, a teacher, what would help you as an adult be successful in supporting the myriad of needs that come to us through our students each day? And how can you be part of a solution in a community school? That's the purpose of this conversation and this work. So we want to end with a strategy, and you can consider what you would like to use. And if you can see my hand, I'm going to show you a multi-sensory strategy that's very simple. Of course, there's a fist of 5. I have a closed brain, I'm not ready to learn, or I have an open brain. But there's also positive self-talk and allowing a student or adult to center in what is available to them to calm and be able to access rational thought. So it's really simple. You just take your hand and you touch a finger to the thumb. I am okay. I am very special. I can do this. Even to put it next to your leg where adults around don't notice, but you're grounding yourself. We have the color card that we've noticed that students can pick that up and remove themselves to the reset space, or a teacher can help a student make a good choice. The anchor practice, I just shared an example of that. Star breathing, and then of course proximity. How are we close and how can we offer new supports? I believe we are right at 1 o'clock. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
So we deeply appreciate your commitment to this work. Lisa has dropped in links that provide access to online free training, access to the surveys if you're interested in that, and of course more information about our reset space and how you could consider a revision process in your own schools to better support our students. The next part of the conversation will be on April the 9th from 12 to 1, followed by the panel conversation that we're getting ready to share now. So we're going to stop the recording at this point.